Good morning on this Sunday, September 12th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. The vote wasn't even close. The Atlanta City Council paves the way for a new police and fire training facility to be built in DeKalb County. President Donald Trump announces he will be back in Georgia this month to headline a political rally, and Governor Kemp threatens a legal challenge against the Biden administration's vaccine mandate for federal employees and some private companies. Phil, Theron, Kathy, and Martha are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
After months of debate and more than 17 hours of public comment, the Atlanta City Council overwhelmingly decides to move forward with a police and fire training facility.
This is something that can't wait, and I'm not going to put that burden on a new mayor.
Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms stood alongside the city's police and fire chiefs, applauding the decision. In a 10-4 vote, the Atlanta City Council voted in favor of leasing land in DeKalb County to the Atlanta Police Foundation. The move means plans to build this new public safety training campus can now move forward.
That they will be given the most up-to-date training, not to serve as warriors in our communities, but to serve as guardians.
But the new training facility has met fierce opposition. Last month, protesters gathered in front of City Hall to oppose the project they call Cop City.
We don't believe that better trained police officers is what the solution is to any of this. We in fact believe that if that funding does exist, it should go into community support.
The foundation will build the facility on 85 acres of land. The remaining 265 acres will be a green space with public access. Theron, I'll start with you this week. Several council members who supported the plan called it a good compromise. Police and fire get their training facility, opponents get their green space. Do you think this was a good compromise?
Well, we've talked about on the show for a while, Lori, that this was a very controversial issue. I'm so glad that you pointed out to our viewers that it was 17 hours of public comment. But if you really look at this in its totality, it's really been about 40 hours of public input. You may remember the City Council delayed this vote back in June at the recommendation of some City Council members, particularly led by Public Safety Chair Councilwoman Joyce Shepard. And so when this vote came up, I think a lot of people knew that it was going to be a lot of sort of back and forth, and a lot of people sort of agreeing that we should move forward on this and disagree. But I got to applaud the 10 council members who voted for this, but particularly Public Safety Chair Joyce Shepard, and of course the Bottoms administration and the Atlanta Police Foundation, which by the way is going to pay $60 million of this $90 million project that they've raised on their own for corporate sponsorship. And so I do believe that at a time where morale is low in the police department, it's about retention, it's also about recruiting. And at a time where we have a public safety facility that's such bad shape that actually they can't even train in it, I do believe that ultimately this is a long-term public safety comprehensive solution that I think the city would benefit from.
Phil, there are some folks, who are tweeting that this fight isn't over. Do you think there's a chance that this could be undone somehow?
I don't think so, Lori. I think it is a win for the people of Atlanta and public safety, and it's a really welcome slap in the face to those defund the police crowd, the far left crowd that always calls the police racist. And we needed this facility. I think it was a good compromise. I agree with some of Theron's points. The Police Foundation especially needs to be commended. They really took a lead on this, and they took a really unfair beating by the opponents. So it's a win-win.
Kathy, considering the crime rate in Atlanta right now and the fact that the current fire training facility was condemned, why so much opposition?
Well, I think there were sort of two pockets of opposition. One are the people who don't want any investment in Atlanta police or fire. And then the other are the people who, particularly who live in the neighborhood of where the facility would be located, who have been working for well over 20 years with the expectation that this would become the next big green space in an area that is really doesn't have any. And this is the problem with Atlanta, right? We engage communities, we get plans, we lead people's expectations about something that's going to happen, and then at the 11th hour, if it's expedient, we just sort of change it and go do something else. And folks are tired of it, and I expect that it'll have some repercussions in the elections.
But Kathy, what about this 265 acres of green space? They're not getting nothing.
Well, they were going to get that anyway. they were going to get all of the land except for the part, now that's going to be removed for dedication to the police training facility. And that's the problem. There have been other things that have happened where land has gotten away and just kind of gets chipped away in real estate deals and things like that. So people are, decidedly frustrated, and I don't blame them. We absolutely need new training facilities. We've needed them for a really long time, and I don't have any problem with that at all. What I do have a problem with is people, continuing to invest in public engagement processes and then, to have the rug pulled out from under them very quickly. It's just not fair.
Martha, what do you think about Kathy's point that some of the opponents say that they would like to see more money, really set aside for community support rather than just more law enforcement training?
Well, they say law enforcement training like police officers aren't doing a multitude of things already. I mean, most police officers are great. Most first responders are great. I mean, we're coming up on the anniversary. We just had the anniversary of 9/11, and we saw what first responders do in a crisis. And that's the way most police officers and firefighters do. And I think what this decision does is it says we're not going to buy into the rhetoric anymore that somehow most police officers are bad. And we are going to give them what they need, which is good training, because these guys and gals never know what they're going to come up against in a particular situation, right? So they have to be prepared for anything. So it's not one or the other, train police or have community engagement. They are the ultimate community engagers.
All right, I want to stick with the city of Atlanta, but talk about a new poll out in the Atlanta mayor's race from Public Policy Polling. It shows Felicia Moore out on top with 24% of the vote, followed by Kasim Reed at 19%, Sharon Gay, Antonio Brown, and Andre Dickens all under 10%. But I think the big news here may be the undecideds at almost 40%. Kathy, you ran for mayor. What does that specific number tell you?
Well, I think if you compare that number to Kasim Reed's 19% as former mayor and the person with arguably the highest name recognition in this poll, if I were him, I'd be concerned about 39% of the votes left on the table at this point in time. He should be much higher in the scheme of things, and certainly on top if those undecideds were going to break to him. So what it says to me is those undecideds are looking at the other candidates pretty seriously. So then when you look at Moore with a double-digit lead over all the other candidates, frankly, if you add up all the other candidates, they still haven't reached Moore's lead. I think there's a good possibility that many of those undecideds are going to break in her favor. But it's early yet. People haven't started advertising. Sharon Gay has started advertising, and I'm not sure if her ads had hit at the time this poll went out, but she didn't get a whole heck of a bump as a result of that. So she's going to have to figure out, what else she can do over the next 6 weeks to raise her name recognition.
Phil, what are your thoughts on the numbers? I mean, Kathy pointed out it is early, but polling can tell you a lot.
It can be a snapshot in time, and Felicia Moore, the candidate that got 24% in that one poll, while Reed got 19, ought to be really smiling. In fact, there were two polls this past week, and they basically mirrored one another. I never did see the breakdown of landlines and cell phones. That's always important. But I do agree that the undecideds are there, and that's going to be tell the tale, I guess I should say. I'm still predicting a runoff. Because the name ID for Kasim Reed is high, but the fact that people aren't saying they're supporting him in these polls is a real problem for him because of all the ethical and corruption issues that occurred during his term, and also with crime being a big factor in the whole theme of the campaign. And Felicia Moore was jumped out very early with her public safety ideas and crime fighting, and the others really don't seem to be getting traction. It is true that the TV ads really have just started, or some haven't started yet. So we'll have to figure this out in a couple weeks.
Yes, Theron, I got about 30 seconds. Just your thoughts on these early numbers.
Yeah, I agree with Kathy, and I also agree with Phil in their assessment. I think the one thing I do want to talk about is that I think there is a lane for either Dickens or Sharon Gay, Andre Dickens or Sharon Gay, to try to figure out if their paid advertisement is going to be able to break through. I think if you're Felicia Moore right now, you feel very good at where you are. I agree with Kathy. I think if you're Kasim Reed, you definitely probably want to be higher. I mean, you're a former two-term mayor with a huge number of undecideds. And so now people are going to have to really figure out what is it about your candidacy and your campaign that can be attractive to these undecided voters, and will they break late, and who will that person be that they actually ultimately decide to support.
And we'll be watching. Thanks, everybody. Coming up, the investigation into President Donald Trump by Fulton County's district attorney is moving forward. We'll discuss.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
The investigation into whether former President Donald Trump violated state election laws is moving forward by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. The AJC reports investigators have talked to staff and requested documents from the Secretary of State's office. Martha, we really haven't heard much about this investigation. What do you think will come of it? Is anything here?
Well, I think there are certainly some questions about the phone calls that were made, but I think that it's really hard to do these things after people are out of office, and so I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Well, Theron, the former president announced he will attend a political rally later this month in Perry, Georgia. What do you think about the candidates he'll be stumping for?
Well, I think if you're a Republican aspiring to get the nomination in the Republican Party and you have the support of former President Donald Trump, you're feeling pretty good about your chances. I just will sort of back up something that Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan said this week when he was on a national interview, and that is, does having the support of a very unpopular former president help you win in November? And so I think that that's some of the things that the candidates who are going to graciously accept his support have to think about how they're going to be able to use that support, and will it benefit them if they're the nominee in November.
Phil, what do you think about this kind of strategy? Is it, Donald Trump's support will help you in a Republican primary, but can it help in a general election?
Oh, the Trump support is definitely going to help in a general election. And as I've said before on the program, the fact that President Biden and you have the two U.S. senators especially just tied so tight to Biden and all of his incompetent actions and the open borders, inflation, you name it. There's a backlash. You can see it. Public safety. There's going to be a backlash, and it's going to all redound to the Republicans. It's breaking right for 2022. That's going to be quite a rally, and it'll energize the base.
Kathy, you can weigh in here. The former president is still popular among Republicans.
Yeah, but Georgia is an inherently middle kind of state if you really just look at the average voter regardless of party. And I think that with the chaos that he brought to the election here last time will continue. And you can see it just in the way that he's been pushing Herschel Walker out front. That's not a great choice. That will be proven as we get into the election. And I just want to take issue with something Phil said. Senator Warnock just partnered with Ted Cruz, an unlikely partner on a highway proposal between here and Texas. I think he's showing a lot of agility in addressing the issues of economic development and things that are a concern of average Georgians. So I think, as we start really trying to find out what the middle of Georgia thinks, we're going to see Democrats talking to them, and Trump doesn't talk to them.
I love watching y'all's reactions because we're not in studio. So Phil and Martha, I see you are laughing. Phil, first to you.
I just would tell Kathy, try and look at some of your Democratic polling. Biden is probably down to 30% disapproval in Georgia. Those are moderates. Those are independents, whatever you want to call them. The Republican Party is a center-right party. Yes, you've got Trump as the base, but they are reaching out to the independents and moderates. Now, we might have this debate again as we get into 2022, but right now, the Democrats are hurting, and Warnock throws a bone every now and then to the Republicans, but too little, too late.
Oh, I know we'll have this debate in 2022. Martha, I'm coming to you on another topic because I want to get to this one. The COVID pandemic, where Governor Brian Kemp says he'll pursue all legal options when it comes to the Biden administration's vaccine mandate for federal employees. Martha, your thoughts on this?
I mean, bottom line is this is an unenforceable mandate. And so it's better to get people to decide to get the vaccine on their own. It looks like, DeKalb County CEO Michael Thurman had great success with offering $100. Gwinnett County Schools is offering $500. It's going to have to be a more positive view. And they've had to vacillate already about certain people being involved in the mandate. Other people are not. And so, it's just not going to work. Mandates don't work. And when the president of the United States is talking tougher to the American people than he did to the Taliban, it's a problem.
Kathy, you have your hand up.
Oh, I do think mandates work, and I do think mandates on vaccines have been proven to work over certainly my lifetime. People still have to get vaccinations to send their kids to school. And there's lots of other reasons. I think mandating vaccines with the military, with federal employees, and with large businesses is a really smart way to go. We have a choice between letting this linger on and on and on without taking strong positions about how to get there. And I appreciate the president doing it. And I don't see where Kemp has a leg to stand on in any kind of appeal. I think he's wasting taxpayers' money. And I don't think he's doing anything to curb the epidemic here in a state that's performed horribly from the beginning till now.
One quick comment, Lori. You know, what we've got is a problem here. We've had 2 FDA officials that have resigned because they don't support the idea of a booster. There are also just, look, I'm pro-vaccine. I'm going to get the booster as soon as it's available. But it's not going to work to do a mandate. And we've got to get, if I was going to put pressure, it would be on getting the other 2 vaccines formally approved rather than on emergency use. That is the biggest thing in the way of people being vaccinated.
Yeah, I know we're all pro-vaccine on the show, but Theron, I want to switch gears because Delta Airlines, when we're talking about incentives, Delta Airlines' plan to get more employees vaccinated appears to be working. Almost 80% of their employees are vaccinated. Delta announced 2 weeks ago that employees not vaccinated would have to pay a $200 monthly health insurance surcharge. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that this strategy by Delta Airlines is working, and more private companies will probably start following the sort of the roadmap, the model that Delta has put forward. And I do think, honestly, if you really explain to people the benefits of getting the vaccine shot, and you remember I quoted this before, there was a New York Times article that came out that said 1/3 of the people who were interviewed that were not vaccinated, they were more likely to get vaccinated if there was some type of incentive. And also, since we've had that conversation, there has been a full FDA approval of one of the vaccines. And so ultimately, I think Delta is a big winner on this, and I think you'll see a lot of other Georgia-based corporations follow their lead.
All right, we'll be watching again and discussing it. Thank you. Coming up, it may have just gotten easier for third-party candidates to get on the ballot in Georgia. We'll discuss straight ahead.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
A federal judge's ruling will make it easier for third-party U.S. House candidates to get on the ballot in Georgia. Instead of requiring more than 20,000 signatures, the ruling says third-party candidates will have to get more like 5,000 signatures. Phil, do you expect this ruling to be appealed?
It'll be appealed, but I think it might be upheld. I know the Democrats and Republicans in Georgia aren't all that happy with it, but to be totally objective, I think those were very onerous standards to get all of those petitions to get on the ballot, and you waste a lot of time. I think that, of course, if I could wave the magic wand, I would want a whole bunch of left-wing parties being able to run to drain votes from the Democrat parties. Maybe that'll happen.
Kathy?
Well, I'm glad that this change has come about too, because it's really, really difficult. And as you noted, Lori, it's a significant drop. It's hard to get those signatures because it's not just getting anybody to sign. You got to be able to read them. They got to be voters. It's a real uphill climb, and we could use more competition. In redistricting, we're not going to get competition, and this is about the only way to start having a different conversation and holding people accountable.
Well, Georgia's lieutenant governor is proposing a tax credit that would allow taxpayers to send money to local law enforcement agencies. Theron, if this passes, Georgians would be able to donate money to the law enforcement agency of their choice and get a dollar-for-dollar state tax credit. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this one is very interesting. Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan is very busy on his way out. We all know that he's decided not to seek re-election. I will wait and see to really see how much collaboration is going on leading up to this vote with local police departments and particularly local counties. Local control has got to be in this conversation. So I would hope that the Lieutenant Governor is also making sure that those folks are at the table. But funding the police and giving them money from citizens and with sort of a clear directive of where the money is going and what it's going to be used for and what the county needs, I think is ultimately what can support this legislation. But we'll have to just wait and see if it passes.
Martha, what do you think about this idea?
Well, I don't think it's a bad idea, but we do have a history of doing these kinds of things in the past and supposedly allocating money to a certain cause, and then it doesn't ultimately end up that way. I personally would just rather see us get rid of the income tax and let's just be done with all these tax credits and this kind of stuff, and let's compete with Florida and Tennessee and be a part of that. That's what I would like to see happen.
Phil, you're laughing again.
Well, I'm just agreeing with Martha. I think that's a good idea. We do have to review all of these tax credits. But you know, I think the Lieutenant Governor's heart's in the right place.
All right, I want to move on because the GBI is looking into the deaths of 2 inmates at the Gwinnett County Jail. Investigators say a white powdery substance was found in the jail where 2 people died earlier this week. These deaths come months after 2 other inmates also died, one from a medical emergency, the other by suicide. Kathy, we know Cobb County had similar issues at its jail, and now Gwinnett. Your thoughts on all of this?
Well, it's a real tragedy. You know, obviously, whatever was happening was, you know, not supervised or approved. But still, when people are in your custody, you're responsible for you know, making sure that they're safe. And you know, again, we have underfunded. You know, our jails, our law enforcement for a really long time, and you know, I don't know. I just feel so sad about it. You know, it's really a tragedy, and it's obviously nobody wants anybody to go to jail or make the kinds of decisions that cause them to end up there. But we've got to be able to provide a better, safer environment for people to be, as we hope that they're rehabilitating and being ready to come back into the community.
Definitely a tough situation. We'll leave it there, everyone. Thank you. Coming up, we'll have winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
I want to run the table quickly on winners and losers because then I want to talk a little bit about 9/11. Phil, we'll start with you on winners and losers.
Well, thanks, Lori. And yes, I think it's great to remember what happened on 9/11 when we were attacked by radical Muslims. And it was a wonderful time afterwards in this one sense. And that is, even though there was horror and heroism in all 3 of those sites of the attacks, Americans basically united. And that's sad. 20 years later, we don't see that unity. And in that vein, I'm a veteran and I'm a proud member of Post 29 American Legion Post in Marietta. And they're going to have their annual 5K race on the Marietta Square on November 13th. And I would suggest it all goes to charities. Folks who want to run in that race ought to get on post29marietta.org and sign up and support your vets.
All right, sounds good. Theron, over to you.
All right, I missed last week, so I definitely want to give my brother, Richard Johnson, a happy belated birthday, and also want to wish my mom a happy early birthday, basically around a lot of Virgos. And then lastly, Lori, I found out I have some fans at the Lew Walker Center in DeKalb County, and I want to give a big shout out to Charlene Days. She was there with my colleague, Lori Smith, when we were working on some projects with the senior citizens. So shout out to the seniors at Lew Walker Center. And then I agree with Phil. I think I remember the day where I was and what I was doing on September 11th. When we've lost a lot of precious lives. And then shout out to the frontline workers that put their lives on the line every single day for us.
Absolutely. Kathy, to you.
Well, I was president of the Atlanta City Council at the time, and I was also running to be president of the Atlanta City Council at the time. And I was at my campaign headquarters, and I had staff down at City Hall. We had no idea what was going on and what might happen next. So it was a really difficult day trying to make sure that all the young people who worked for me got in touch with their families, got out of City Hall in case government buildings were attacked. And then, you know, like the rest of our country, everybody just glued to the TV and trying to figure out what on earth was going on. And so I'm glad we're taking the time to remember this day, because for those of us who do remember it, we pledge never to forget, and I certainly won't ever forget that day.
Martha, it's hard to believe it's been 20 years. I remember I was at a TV station across the street as a reporter, and I heard the first plane had hit the World Trade Center, and I was in a live truck listening to it on the radio and wound up at the Varsity and watching it with all these other Atlantans, and we were just gathered around the TV stations watching all of the events unfold. Such an emotional day, and we could all go right back to that day of where we were.
I mean, absolutely. I had scheduled what I thought was going to be this bombshell interview between a county commissioner and a commission chair that didn't get along. And then we were standing there waiting at the news break and saw what happened, and everything changed. I was on the air until 4 o'clock that day because all the satellites were down and the cell towers were down, and you're never going to forget it. And in that vein, you know, we had two people in our town, Major Cole Hogan and Edna Stevens, that were memorialized that died in the Pentagon, and so we remember their families today.
Absolutely. And Phil, I remember going down to Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport just to cover a few stories, and it being just silent, like, you know, hearing no airplanes above, like things that I'll never forget. And I remember thinking, like, and talking to so many people that day, that America will never be the same. And it really hasn't been.
That's a good point, and it has not. And as I said earlier, I wish we could get back to that unity we saw after 9/11. Maybe we can still try. We gotta keep trying.
Absolutely. Theron, last words on this.
I think, look, we all love this country. It's the greatest country in the world. And the fact that, Lori, you gave us an opportunity to all reflect on where we were on that day. But also, we as Americans have got to basically pull together. I agree with Phil that the unity could be better. And, you know, I think we have a president and President Biden that understands that mission.
We gotta leave
and so
it there.
I just think that, again, we just got to thank everybody who put their lives on the lines for us every single day.
Well said.